Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth and logos means the study of science. So we talk about science of truth or study of truth. And mythology means study of myth, science of myth. Myth means fake, lie, imagination in Sanskrit language. It's a Sanskrit root word. Now coming to today's topic, we're going to talk about general issues, especially the recent new education policy, which the Indian Education Minister described in such beautiful way. And I was really impressed and kind of work that they have done. And the most impressed I was with the amount of Bhagavad Gita shlokas that he quoted. Oh my, it has to be seen to see such a qualified man. And I have now more faith in this government, which is working on the new education policy. But my question is, when will American education policy change, which is so much biased against other cultures, especially Hinduism and Buddhism? Hinduism and Buddhism are fashionable topics in the US because most of the rich Americans adopt it. But still, the education which is given to the regular Americans is pretty inadequate. And therefore, we have people who regularly demean it, undermine it. So with us, we have a very famous personality, media personality, author, and he has done PhD in a topic which is amazing, like on an organization, RSS. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Ratan Sharda.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So in US, the woke culture in the campuses is increasing like anything. And the woke culture is, you all know, it's a cancel culture, which you don't like, just cancel it. And to some extent, it has started affecting mostly the regular institutions in the US, especially in the US academic circles. But it has also started affecting other cultures like Hindus and Buddhists also in a big way. So what do you have to say on that? What is the global phenomena? Why it is happening right now? It's sure to come to Indian universities shortly.
Namaskar, Aditya ji. In fact, it's already there. We, our left and our so-called liberal illiberals have a very fast affinity and fast attraction to whatever, a very magnetic appeal for whatever happens in West, and they immediately copy it. So the culture of cancel is already there. It has begun, but fortunately for us, the pushback from the non-left is also very strong. And when you talk of this woke culture, basically, if you look at this entire intolerance in the name of tolerance or in the name of illiberalism, in the name of liberalism, it is nothing but extension of the earlier, what was called Marxist, then it was called neo-left. So this is an extension of the same culture, which believes that only it has the right to truth. So it is one of the most exclusivist religion or cult, which won't allow any other thought process, any other knowledge to prosper. And it began in USA, it is already there in India. But India being so rooted in its own culture that in spite of 70 years of hard efforts by the communist and the neo-left, they have not succeeded to the extent they have succeeded in USA. And in USA, see what has happened basically, which I have discussed earlier also, is that neo-left having lost the political battle for political legitimacy and lost its regimes in the communist world, chose to transform itself into an idea which is basically an idea based on destruction of existing traditions, destruction of existing culture and the value systems of any particular society. It could be US, it could be UK, it could be India or Europe, anywhere. So when pushback comes from the traditionalists or conservatives with right ideas, it has to be opposed because they believe only they have the right to truth. With that in mind, and if you talk of attraction of Hinduism and Buddhism in USA, and there is a strong effort to demonize these thoughts in USA, it is happening in India also. And in India, fortunately, it's a land of Hinduism, Buddhism, or I would say Dharma itself. So it's not easy to dislodge that thought process that is lodged into our DNA since last 5,000, 6,000 years. With this in mind, in USA, because the thought itself is alien, the very thought of pluralist pluralist thought process which allows every other belief system to prosper and respect all other religions, vis-a-vis the Christian worldview of exclusivist thoughts, which says that if you don't get into the get into Christianity or surrender yourself to Jesus, you as a sinful person will reach hell. So to save you, I must bring you to Jesus. So this particular approach, where no other believer except church, and also now Islam also, as it puts its foot very strongly in USA, the Abrahamic group of religions. If that is so, understand an idea where you can have any god in any shape and size, and can you can also find moksha or nirvana from any thought, with or without any prophet, with or without any middleman. This idea will take time to take roots in USA or any Western world, because for them it's a very alien thought. I don't blame them, but with this unfamiliarity, with this profound thought process, naturally they would fall very easily for what the Abrahamic religions call, satanic practices or mysticism, because for them spirituality is very foreign. For them, the very idea that you can reach God, Godhood, or God without an intermediary, it's totally unacceptable. And if I say that Aham Brahmasmi, I am myself Brahma, that is the biggest egotist statement that you can make. And naturally, you become heretic. This is the reason why you see all this kind of negativity about Hindu belief systems that you see in USA. And the biggest proponents of them are not naturally neo-left, which draws inspiration from communism, which does not believe in any god, but they themselves worship various gods like Stalin, Mao, and all, who between themselves killed 100 million people to impose a belief system which people have refused to get into. So this is the tragedy of this entire so-called liberal crowd.
No, you made a very good point. Like US prides itself in calling itself the leader of the free world, while they're keeping their own people a prisoner of philosophy and ideology, where
No,
they
I
say,
don't think, Aditya, that the US does it. It's the academic world of USA. And earlier the church, which thought that there's something wrong. In fact, I think Alabama, which has said that yoga should not be practiced because that will result in influence of Hinduism. That has happened now.
Yeah.
So that is religious opposition on one side, and there is academic opposition on the other side. Because if Hindu thought takes root, then their entire idea of breaking down the societies, breaking down the family system will not succeed. And of course, their entire worldview of imposing their own monotheistic thought of Marx will just disappear. That is the reason you find this kind of approach. I would not blame political system of USA, but if you look at the way some political leaders have opposed yoga in USA even recently, that shows you that much more lobbying is required from the Hindu followers to get these people out of this thought process.
the like you correctly said, the academic world actually makes the framework for the which is driven by intellectualism, which is just the opposite of spiritualism. Intellectualism, with any kind of philosophy, makes you exclusive actually in many ways, whereas the Hindu culture has both intellectual side as well as the spiritual side, and which is unfathomable for most of these people. The academics invariably in the US comes to the politics, invariably, because they use those research papers and findings and say, okay, this is the new basis. So this is how it works over here. But
Aditya, aren't you surprised that people in US and the academics have no objection to the most irrational thoughts that are propounded by Bible and Quran or their proponents, and they try to justify it in various ways vis-a-vis the highly scientific dharmic approach of Hindus? Does that surprise you that what kind of rationalists these people are, that they're so irrational, that Earth is flat, that Earth was only born 6,000 years back or 4,000 years back, whatever? And so this entire narrative itself of Abrahamic religions is so irrational, but they will not speak against it. And that is the biggest irony.
the money talks behind it. Like I say usually, and I say it in fun, when the money talks, bullshit walks. That's from the movie Twins, and where Dave DeVito makes that argument against Arnold Schwarzenegger. But it's a movie in any case. But the philosophy is summed up in one way. So these people, they talk like this because there is a money behind it. And I can tell you, in the last 10 years, most of the Hindus as a community have not invested in Hindu chairs in the universities. They have spent a lot of money on other aspects. Like there's one famous doctor, he's a good friend of mine, therefore I won't say which state. So nobody, he spent almost $210 million for a university, donating it for a chair in his name for medical research. Now the
In
$210 million
fact,
is
I was reading Rajiv Malhotra ji, where he tells that Indian family gave some millions of dollars for a chair in which they had no say at all who will be the chair, who will heading the chair, what topics will be covered by this particular chair, and no say at all despite giving millions of dollars. And that is the tragedy of the Hindus in USA, that they contribute to the educational cause or academics, but they have no right what is going to happen with that money. So this shows very biased attitude of the academics and also of the general educational environment, and our weakness as Hindus to put our foot down that if I am going to contribute, this is what I want to be researched, this is what I want to be presented, or this is what I want research to be done in a proper unbiased way, not even a biased way. But unfortunately, even that is not happening. So this inferiority complex that has been ingrained into the thought process of people who came out of Macaulay education system, and the initial first generation of US Indians who came to USA because of the very environment they came from, that they came from a poor, orthodox, and downtrodden society. That is at the root cause of this approach to contribute in the society, but not really contributing in the way that they want.
first of all, most of these people have come with an old thought process, with a very apologetic Hindu, and where
Yeah.
they do not have the self confidence, and then when they put the money, they're just putting it like in their father's name, in their mother's name. And unfortunately, they use the old Hindu charitable principle where the left hand should not know what the right hand is doing, but they forget the patatva, the qualification of the person receiving the charity. Now most of these people use that money, and obviously all this money is spent in the salaries of those people, and that's what all about is. If the salaries portion is removed, there will be no research in North America, pretty much. So the new chairs which Hindus, or even the some organization Hindu organizations, want to sponsor, believe me, in USA there are 11,000 Islamic chairs being set up. 11,000,
Oh, 11,000.
not just one or two, 11,000. And the Christian chairs are approximately 167,000 chairs now. And if you look at the Hindu chairs, there are 320 total in all the universities put together. So you can just imagine how much money is being spent. And the Jewish chairs in the entire academic lobby exceeds everybody else. It's 235,000. And now, so you can see, so it's like the if you throw the money, everything comes out. But I must tell you, there were some Hindu organizations like ISKCON and other places. They have made a dent through their mass work. So even if nobody goes there, one challenge from somebody comes out and everything is gone out, thrown out of the window. So there is a way to fight this also, if it's done in a very organized way, in a very right way. But the problem is, most of the Hindus, in an apologetic way, speak the language of their Christian counterparts. When you do that, you cannot defend Hinduism. We have to have an exclusive Hindu language. Like, for example, Dharma, Shastra. Like, therefore, I really like the topic of Rajiv Malhotra also, intranslatables, which is a very good topic which he has selected and released a book also.
Right.
And so this is the problem here. The identity is, when they come from India, they are stuck in the old India where they were very apologetic. But the new Hindus, the new students who are coming, are different. So they naturally go out and challenge. But another problem also comes in. The politics of India is being openly commented by these vested interests. I mean, these are chairs also. So not, it's not against India by all the people. It's just a few, because these chairs are sponsored by Qatar, Doha, Qatar, and to some extent Egypt, to some extent Libya. All the oil money is going there now. So it's very easy to buy a chair. Anybody can donate, because most of these education institutes are non-profit. They can accept donation from any part of the world. Now that is not happening from the rich Indian businessmen. They are not contributing for their dharma, because whatever is produced in the US reaches India after 2 years, 3 years maximum nowadays. And then again, there's another tag. Do you think that in India that awareness is increasing?
Yes, definitely the consciousness is increasing. It has not transferred onto the ground. You talked of NEP, but if you are worried about the speed of change in USA, we are more worried about the speed of change in India itself, because it has taken 6 years to create the new education policy. It went into two revisions because the earlier committees didn't have, I would say, people who were basically from education background, very few of them, and also the thought process was quite bureaucratic and couched in the term that was there since last 70 years. But finally, the NEP has come. It will take much more time to change the syllabus or put with the right, you bring into the right the paradigm that you talked about as per HRD minister, and also present those ideas into textbooks which present the rich value system, the rich traditions of Indian education system and Indian knowledge system. So it will take some time for this to fructify. If that is happening at this speed in India, because the background of work of 70 years of left lobbies will have to be fought at the academic level. Similarly, it has to be fought at academic level in USA also, in all over the world, wherever Hindus are being persecuted or Hindus are being presented in a very poor light. But for that, Hindus and Indians have to realize that they must stand up for the civilization, for the value system, which is the right value system for the upcoming world, where everybody has to live together, cooperate with each other, and respect each other. If that has happened, and we couch the exclusivist ideologies into some mundane words, then it will take much more time. So unless we realize the nature of the fight, see, Clash of Civilizations was written much earlier, but we have seen it happen. If that is what is happening, then naturally we have to wake up. For example, the kind of bias that we have in the academic world or in the media, in Nigeria, just about 2 weeks back or so, forget the old story. 600 students were kidnapped. We do not know whether those families or those students are alive or they are dead, where they are, and nary one word, nary one commentary or worry about these people. So, what happens to Black Lives Matter? Do Black Lives Matter only in USA, where it's political power following that particular thought, or it Black Lives Matter in Africa also, where they actually come from? So, if this is the kind of propaganda war, this is the kind of, I would say, ideas being spread, then naturally there is something wrong with this entire idea, this entire approach of what the academics and the media wants us to move towards.
See, Black Lives Matter is a concept by the white apologists who want to undo the atrocities they had done in the
Aditya, I
past.
can understand political Black Lives Matter, but I cannot understand the academics and the so-called liberation theologists and so-called human rights apologists. They have the no words at all for all the atrocities that happen in Africa, that has divided African countries with their horrible colonial past, and they have not said a single word of this kind of highly violent approach to stop the progress itself of humankind. I am more worried about these people who sell the narrative of Hindu phobia and all that. They have no word at all, and that is really highly worrying, because after all, these are the people, the black people who actually suffered colonialism. At least people who came to USA, finally they have found some space. Finally, they are finding some justice. But those people in those countries who are actually rich in resources but have been made poor by colonialism and now by the corrupt regimes, and now the fight between Christianity and Islam, it has to be responded to. You cannot keep quiet and say that we will not speak anything because it will hurt your political games.
The BLM was a heavily a movement by the academics and students and left lobbies for as
Yes,
a
yes.
white apologist, mostly the people who were apologizing for what their ancestors had done. But US doesn't have a worldview pretty much in the academic circles, where countries like India have to step in, because I always so predicted that India is the real human rights champion in the whole world. And somewhere that message has to come from the Indian foreign ministry and made the policy of the state where they protect the human rights of all. And there only India, because of the Hindu philosophy, they can do that, because Hindu philosophy regards everybody else as a family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and which is the thought process of the magnanimous. And the small minded Lagoon, the second line of this shloka is the Lagu, the small minded only think about themselves. Only India can do that, because despite Hindus being oppressed significantly, even in India, but still Hindus have this large heart of including the whole
See, the
world.
difference between the West and the India is that we believe Brahma resides in every human being. So, and there is also self-correcting mechanism or evolution of the culture and the religious practices in India, which is self-correcting itself over thousands of years, and that is happening today also. So, this self-correcting mechanism is something that is to be appreciated rather than sticking to the old stories of caste atrocities and various caste systems which are imposed on Indian thought process. They got corrupted in last 1,000 years, but having accepted those atrocities, accepted those inequalities that kept into it, Hindu dharma, Hindu society has risen over itself, and it has regularly corrected itself, given up what is not correct and added new dimensions to its thoughts. This is something that is to be understood by people who sell us the idea of what Hindus were 1,000 years back or 500 years back, not Hindus were 6,000 years back. So this highly synthesized approach of Indian thought process, that is what to be told to the world, not some discrepancies or the errors that crept into it during the years of slavery.
It's a great point you have made. One of the things which comes to my mind is, or this is a question also for you, is that why don't Hindus take a lead in the US on human rights issues as a state policy as well as a community? Because Hinduism is the only culture which is based on Brahman or spirit soul, and it can only bring equality to all, and it actually empowers. I usually say, when I gift Bhagavad Gita to someone else, I say, this book lets you find out yourself. All other books tell you what to do, but this book lets you find out yourself. So
Right.
why don't we come out of the shell and we start saying this is the only option for a democracy? Because if any democracy has to succeed, it cannot succeed on left wing or branding somebody as right wing. I always say we are neither left nor right. We are dharmic, means that we'll do what is
True.
logically best. So why doesn't India come out, or Indian education institutes come out and say this openly?
See, as far as India is concerned, we will see a sea change in next 5 6 years, as you already have seen through the NEP and various other measures, and also changing nature of the society, the rising consciousness about our own strengths and our own weaknesses. So this strength of ours will change the narrative in India. About USA, as I had said sometime earlier, also in one of the earliest discussions, that the first generation who came, which was traditionally brought upon Nehruvian education system and brought upon an inferiority complex that was ingrained in those ideas of that time in India. They were also trying to settle themselves up, so they had no time. Plus, as you said, they were in a kind of protective shell. The new generation that has been born and brought up in India, that is to be addressed. And that is to be addressed in the terms and terminology that they understand. Because they have come through US education system, where we know how Hindu dharma is being taught or explained, which is highly derogatory and not really what Hindus are. Till we can get that part of the education corrected by continuous lobbying, we will find that our youth, most of them are cut off from their cultural roots. And when they grow up, they are Hindus only in name. They are totally American, or I would say Abrahamized or Christianized in the thought process. And I have no problem with what they learn, but unless they learn about their own true strength, how will they come up and stand up for our value systems and for the strength we have and against the demonization that we face? That has to be understood and that has to be explained to the youth. There are some youth who are getting trained into various organizations and they understand from where they come. So till we are able to explain to the youth the roots of from where they come and the strength of their belief system, they will find it very difficult to stand up in political field or cultural field or academics and make a point about what India is and what the dharmic system is. For this, the earlier generation must contribute not just in chairs but also in various other ways for getting these ideas across to the new generation. You cannot expect somebody from outside to do it. It has to come from US. It has to come from people already arrived in their social status, and they have to do that duty to the society, try to create the right environment so that younger generation knows from where they come, and then the scenario will change.
It brings me to a very important point here, because the world is reeling in victimhood politics, because the victimhood politics is become the new human rights call. And somewhere Hindus have to, I would say, I'm not suggesting anything, but I would say that Hindus have to adopt this also, because they have been the biggest victim, right from Macaulay and Max Muller, who actually racially, because their whole goal was to civilize the Indians, which is Christianize the Indians. And since then, the atrocities have been going on, but we have not cried enough. We get up and we forget it and we move on. But the world doesn't move that way, because
The
it's
victimhood comes from actually, unless we realize that there has been a huge Holocaust against Hindus and their thinking, unless that is brought into public with the right kind of approach, with the right kind of writing and the materials, the crying about what is happening today will not work. Because if we have lofty ideas, we have lofty systems, and we have faced the worst kind of Holocaust, worse than Jews. In fact, if you look at the number of people who are killed or the number of temples that are destroyed across the length and breadth of India during the last 1,000 years, how will we really know what we lost? And then just to cry victimhood now that how our academic is being presented in USA or in India will not work. We have to go back to that period where we were doing well, when we were doing well, not to copy that period, not to cry about that period, but the huge Holocaust that we face, the cruelty we face, that has to be brought to the people. When that is brought to the world, which has been suppressed continuously by the Western writers for obvious reasons, because they themselves are colonialists and they have been perpetrating these crimes across the world from north to south, and the earliest Islamists who did it for hundreds of years, that has to be brought to the people's notice. And this millions of people who died for the cause of dharma, if they are not given that due, and we are not able to establish this firmly and tell the world, then this cry of victim looks very hollow. I would not go for victim of today. I would actually present the history to the people as far as I am concerned, but to the world, what happened to the Hindu society, and then what it was capable of, and then today what it has to do. Then people will listen. Today, if you have some wrong presentation in the US academics, it will not help unless you go back in period and present that history, which is being whitewashed by people who ordered Tishke. And Reddy University doesn't want to correct that impression and that whitewashing of history. Then you see where the problem lies.
See, you hit a good point. So that's what I'm saying. There's a Holocaust Institute of the Jews work. Similar lines. So Islamic groups have set up the Islamic Holocaust. Now,
Islam.
yes, the Rohingya Muslims.
They have to first write Holocaust within Islamic countries.
Yeah.
How Shias and Sunnis destroyed each other and killed their own people. Then they can talk of Holocaust from other people, because the biggest Holocaust had been within their own believers.
See, all the campaigns in the world, in the US also, against Hindus is Muslims are getting victimized in India, in Kashmir, in Kerala, in Burma, but they very cleverly hide the Hindu Holocaust in Pakistan, Hindu Holocaust in Kashmir Valley, Hindu Holocaust in northern Kerala, or
Let us
Hindu.
talk of Muslim victimhood first of all, or persecution of Muslims. In Kashmir, Muslims are able to cleanse Kashmir from Hindu Kashmiris. They have been growing, they have been prospering, so where is the persecution? All over India, Muslims have risen in population vis-a-vis the declining population in neighboring countries of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, which are declared Islamic countries. If that is the scenario where the Hindus have suffered heavily in those countries which are called Islamic countries, and Muslims who have prospered in India in terms of their population, in terms of their growth, if they have not, they have become backward community, it is more to do with the orthodoxy pushed upon them by the mullahs and maulvis. It is not due to Indian state. In fact, this narrative against this government of last 6-7 years is that they have been oppressing minorities, but the amount of resources invested in educating and bringing up the minority community, which predominantly is the second largest majority in India, that is Muslims, has been much more than all other previous regimes. The backwardness of Muslims, if you look at, was promoted by the so-called progressives in Bengal, beginning with Communist Party, later by TMC. If you look at everywhere else, where for last 60 years secularists have been ruling, why Muslims become oppressed, or why did Muslim become a backward community? Nobody imposed it upon them. And while this government has been actually promoting better education, better facilities for Muslims, where they spend much more money as compared to previous regimes. So this entire hollow victimhood, I'm not even talking of the kind of news that has been coming regularly about misbehavior of these people and provoking Hindus. I'm not getting this. I'm just talking of policy level. If that is the scenario, then entire narrative has to fall down. It cannot stand up to the scrutiny of any kind of academic study. You can bring up, as I talked about, one or two cases of a Muslim boy or a Muslim person who has been attacked. There are more than 100 or 150 actually during the Modi regime itself. Hindus have been attacked for their belief, for their effort to save cows, etc. And if you look at the small numbers compared to African countries and in Middle East countries, where for belief itself others have been persecuted, various groups within Islamist religion have been Islam religion have been persecuted. So this talk of persecution in India, in Pakistan, you talk of Hindus. Why talk of Hindus? Just talk of Shias, talk Qadians, talk of Ahmadiyas. Where are they? Ahmadiyas were one of the four people foremost in partition, and they were the most important people in Pakistani regime when Pakistan was formed. Even today, there are important office bearers. If they cannot live safely in Pakistan, which is a land of Pak, of Islam, how they have any face to talk about India? In India, you have the head of the state, biggest the vice chancellors, the ministers, and all top leaders of various industries and social activities who are Muslims. Show me such cases in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or in Afghanistan.
See the facts you and I know, facts we know. But America has a culture of the duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker. That's the American culture. Did you hear me? What I said? Did you hear me? So
yes, I said so. I understand.
So the American the duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker, and that means somebody has to quack more. And I tell you, the Israeli government has set up the Holocaust institution. American Jews have set it up, and so when they speak Holocaust, anti-Semitism, big way, and they speak about Islamophobia in a big way. But there is no institutional support to Hindu phobia, and the Hindu Holocaust stories doesn't come up in Kashmir, in Afghanistan, which was a Hindu country before 1919, and before 1947, Pakistan was a Hindu country, and nobody's talking about
a Hindu kingdom till about 200 years back.
Correct.
Or maybe 100 years back also.
Yeah, and even in Burma, Myanmar gets a lot of flack, but nobody supports Myanmar because they were trying to protect the Hindus and Buddhists of Myanmar. That was a real story, and what they did was something else. But point is that we are not quacking enough. Like, we are not saying enough.
But see, I would, if you take the example of Jews put up wonderful institutions. They created a right kind of database. They created right kind of narrative with the right kind of facts. That is why they succeeded. We cannot simply quack loud. We have to have basis which is present. We just have to present it properly. As you rightly said, we need to create institutions within America because that is where Indians are one of the most prosperous community, where they have right kind of political push and their influence in the society. If they can't do it in USA, where the narrative is set for the world or even today, then whom do you go to?
Again, looking at the Hindu Americans, I know them inside out here with the community here. This video hopefully reaches to all of you and listen
So we
and
work,
comment
see,
on it.
we work with hope. People like us have been working with hope that our society will wake up, will be conscious of its duty towards humanity, towards its own past and future, and it will change. So rather than criticizing them, we can only remind them again and again that we have to see to it, to see to our own welfare. Nobody else will come to protect you. Nobody else will come to support you unless you stand up. That's what Jews with such a minuscule population have shown the world and shown us. And that is why Israel and India from beginning have been very close to each other because we understand the pain of Holocaust. But they have learned lessons from us. We have not learned any lessons from them. So we have to keep reminding our people. We cannot criticize them. We cannot badger them because of the environment when they came up and the kind of education, the kind of political, message they have got from their earlier leaders. But now at least we have to come out of this inferiority complex, this slavish mentality, and stand up.
If Hindus and together create institutions, create databases, and when I say quack the loudest, not with just quacking, with the data, with information. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere. And
Yeah,
most of the these chairs which are working in Abrahamic faiths, which are today working against Hinduism, they are working on fake data. They have created data. Most of the Americans don't know the reality. Most of them, but we have not communicated enough. We do it.
exactly.
We have not communicated that no, that's not wrong. But instead of saying that's not wrong, we say this is the fact. Prove it. Check it
Yes,
out. And
yes,
when people will and see to wake up Americans again, you need money. Like Mahabharat says, from artha the service of dharma is done. From dharma service you get artha. But again, artha has to be used for dharma. Now that is very clearly written in Mahabharat. But we have failed to, we have to start looking as a American community or as a Hindu community, you have to look at it that we have to start using artha, part of artha toward dharma. And today this is also dharma. Because if we are not strong as a community, we cannot help ourselves as well as anybody else. We have the best
see, to give
philosophy.
an example, Aditya ji of India, RSS, when it started working in 1925, it was ridiculed. Nobody paid any attention. It went on its own way, kept on insisting what was right, and did not talk against anybody but for the society. And slowly, over a period of time, raised the consciousness, the common consciousness of the Hindus within India about what they are and why they need to unite, why they need to look back to look ahead, and what is great about our culture and our tradition and our religion and our dharma, and why we need to do it for our own good with this particular approach, and why India can rise only we unite and we become educated with our own history and our own culture. And that is how over 9 decades was able to create an environment where you see a sea change in Indian society, a sea change in the way we look at ourselves, and then now the way world looks at us. So whatever the opposition does, if we keep doing our work honestly and sincerely without negativity, things will change. Yes, of course, speed of change has to be more, and that is where resources, that is where creation of institutions helps a lot.
No, I the you know I, I'm so happy to hear from you all this because this is what the investment we need to make in our community. We have around 500 temples in North America and increasing every day. And plus, we have, I would say, 6 to 50 million Americans. 6 million are from South Asia and other places, but around more than that are followers of Hinduism. The Pew Research counts them as agnostic or without any faith because they don't recognize anyone without a book. But we do have a book, and that's why I purposely translated the Gita as the Hindu Bible for Americans because they thought that if they don't have a Bible, that means they have nothing. So now we have a Bible, which is nothing but Bhagavad Gita. But the point is that everyone follows a book, but when we Hindus are asked what book you follow, we start looking at the stars, and we look at we're confused because we're not educated. That one book, and Adi Sankaracharya gave a very solid point. He said, let there be only one book, Bhagavad Gita. That's how he tried to unite the Hindu society during that time, 1500 years back. And then he set up the four Peeth. Now, that model, which he has already given, and majority of the Hindus, like 90%, they have deep respect for Adi Sankaracharya, the original one who came from Kerala. And don't you think that can be basis for Hindu unity globally?
Definitely. In fact, this is one book which is essence and what you call sattva of all the philosophies that have been propounded by various Upanishads and Vedas and also various Puranas. And that is why it is very important. It's a distilled knowledge, is distilled wisdom, which can easily be understood, though not as easily as the very simplistic tribal kind of religions that exist today, trying to dominate the world culture, but in a very sophisticated way, where you can choose your path, which doesn't affect what belief system at a very worship level it is, but a very enlightened way of looking at what suits your temperament, what suits your nature, and how you can improve yourself as a human being, how you can serve the society, and how you can live a life. This kind of liberty in the thought process that Gita presents, and as per the prakriti or the nature of the human being, that is unique to Indian culture. And it is, as I said, distilled knowledge of entire Indian philosophy. So this can be one book definitely, which can be become the beacon light of not just Hindu society but also the humanity.
It is the most commented book by the world. And
Yes,
when Narendra Modi ji gave that book as a gift to the heads of state, that was a heart-touching moment for me personally, because it's the first time any leader, and that to a leader with good standing, has started representing Hindu culture completely. Because that's one book most of the Americans will adhere to. That book has something of value. Most of the Americans, including all the American leaders, Mark Twain or anyone else you say, Mark Twain words comes to my first in my mind, because they use that book as a basis for highlighting something beyond
no, forget just philosophers. In fact, scientists
science.
have over a period found out this is the closest to what they've been thinking and working all their lives. And the scientific backing out to Gita by great scientists itself proves it's a scientific scripture which gives you a right way of looking, learning your own inner self and deciding how you want to proceed in this world, how you want to get yourself out of this mode of action or reach to the God. That is the kind of thought process that suits every scientific mind.
Thank you, Ratanji. I think it's a great session, and I think many of the viewers loved it. And despite Sunday morning, so many people joined us live. Thank you all for joining. Do watch this interview again and again. This is something which we have done it came naturally. Me and Ratan Sharda did not prepare for it. We just speak
In
from
fact, you wanted me to speak today. I think, as far as I know, you said you'll talk about the Indian elections, you talk about the current political situation, and suddenly you turned the entire discussion into some kind of spiritual discussions or social issues. Great.
So we didn't prepare. So it's a organic discussion here, right here. So thank you all very much for watching it and being on live. And next topic will cover the Indian elections and other things. Thank you, Ratanji. Namaskar.
Thank you.